Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Suresan, would you mind putting up the presentation, please? Thank you. Welcome to today's session. I'm Michael Webb from G3G UK. Next screen for us, please, Suresan. As the slide says, my name is Michael Webb. I'm the business unit head for G3G in the UK. I look after BEST for UK and Ireland. On the call today is Suresan Ellary with me. He's the product manager from BEST in South Africa, and we'll do an introduction soon. Next slide, please. So just a quick agenda of what we're going to be covering today. Quick overview of G3G and BEST. We'll then move on to the BEST Vendor Reconciliation Module, which is why you're here. Some customer success stories, looking forward with the product, BEST and Fiori, and then we'll end off with any questions. I will be monitoring the questions, so please feel free to ask during the session. Quick overview of G3G. As I said, based in the UK, we've got over 25 years of SAP experience. We focus on SAP S4HANA, ECC6, Business One. We also look after IFS. We work in very highly regulated industries, complex B2B, and we specialize in diversities and acquisitions. We're part of the group Elephant, which is wholly owned by Piyush. The next slide, please, Suresan. As you can see, we're a whole bunch of specialized companies that operate under the Group Elephant brand, from HR to S4HANA to SAP to hosting. We've got a whole multitude of companies underneath our umbrella. We operate in a global footprint from the US all the way through to Australia, so we've got a nice global reach that we can help out any of the organizations. Next is just a sample of the customers we deal with under the group. These are just a little bit of the odd 1,000 that we deal with on a daily basis. And then just with regards to BEST, G3G has been a BEST partner since 2019. We support BEST in the UK and Ireland and also do the implementations with the support of BEST. Over to you, Suresan.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. So as Michael has introduced me, I'm Suresan, the product manager for the BEST Vendor Recons Module. BEST is a South African company founded in 2009. We focus on developing, implementing, and supporting SAP certified Add-on modules. We resolve gaps in standard SAP functionality within the finance areas. Now, what we do have available is one of the modules which is focused on today, the Vendor Recons and Statement Reader modules, and there are a host of other modules that are also available. We provide cost-effective and realizable benefits, and we're also trusted globally by multinational enterprises. These are just some of our BEST clients that are based across the world and have implemented one or more of the BEST modules. Okay, so now why the need for the BEST Vendor Recons module? How do we assist and alleviate pain points within the vendor recons process? So on the slide, what I currently have is the process that our vendors were processing their reconciliations with prior to moving on to BEST. So it's a very manual process, being all the gray steps that are carried out manually within the recon process. Now, the vendor recons process takes form of two parts. On the one end, you have your SAP creditor documents that are posted, your invoices, your credit notes, and processing of payments, etc. On the other hand, you have your vendor statement that comes through in multiple different formats. It could come through via email in PDF or Excel format, or in some instances, paper format statements being received as well. Now, one of the aspects is to take that data from the vendor statement, put it into a non-SAP tool like Excel, for example, to start this reconciliation process. On the SAP side, it often entailed our customers downloading or using interfaces to take the data outside of SAP into this non-SAP tool. Alternatively, users will view the SAP screen and retype this data in this non-SAP tool. And that's where the reconciliation process now starts. It entails manual matching and ticking off, highlighting in order to manually reconcile and balance that reconciliation. At that point, that reconciliation is probably saved on their PC somewhere prior to going through an approval process, if that is done within that reconciliation process. That will often entail printing and signing this manually. Once that manual approval process is completed, we found that a lot of our customers would then have to store this reconciliations for later use in filing rooms or scanning it back in and saving that on a shared drive, for example. On an ad hoc basis, there would be a requirement to then send this final reconciliation to the vendors, either via fax or emailing it to the vendors. And then from a management reporting point of view, it is limited.
So, Suresan, from this complex reconciliation process that's currently happening manually, what are the main business drivers that companies are looking for to move to a solution like BEST?
Okay, so some of the main drivers, Michael, as I've just explained, it is a very manual process done outside of SAP, and it often entails interfaces or duplication of SAP data, which also causes room for user error and outdated data being reconciled. Now, with BEST, as mentioned, we are based in SAP, so all we do is you add additional transactions to your current SAP landscape. So there's no login onto any other systems. We follow the same SAP security controls and audit trails, and it is your current IT infrastructure. So there's no additional hardware or personnel required, and it follows the current transport landscape. Some of the other benefits is that it's always current. So it's updated as SAP transactions are posted, and you can drill down to the rest of SAP directly from BEST. So all those reconciliation activities as per the previous slide, which was manual and often outside of SAP, is now integrated and automated directly in SAP. And our current customers note automation benefits of time saving and accuracy. It's also cost effective as it leverages the current SAP investment. So there's no need to purchase any expensive third-party software, for example. Okay. Now, what is the reconciliation process in BEST? So this is just a summary of what a user would do in BEST to carry out the reconciliation. Now, the starting point is our vendors. They send us the statement in multiple different formats. BEST has multiple loading mechanisms that we cater for, starting with, for example, a direct Excel upload that can be uploaded directly into the BEST solution in SAP. Alternatively, if there's small paper or PDF statements, users do have the functionality to use what we call our copy capture feature. It's simple and quick to use. We do have automated solutions as well. For example, we have an OCR-based statement reader, which will retrieve attachments from a predefined email address, interpret the data on that statement, convert it into a readable format, and load that statement automatically into BEST via an RFC load. Some of our customers already had third-party OCR solutions implemented, and they then chose to leverage off those solutions to read, interpret, and convert those statements, and then load it automatically into BEST. And then there are some other options. For example, processing statements through iDocs using SAP PI, EDI loading of statements. And our last option would be what we call a web statement portal. This allows vendors to upload their statement in a predefined Excel format. There's validations that are done there before that statement is loaded automatically via RFC into BEST. Now, once that statement's loaded into SAP, we can also store the original attachment. So similar to some invoicing solutions where you have access to the original invoice directly in SAP, we can make the original statement available in SAP as well. Once the statement's loaded, the first point is automatic matching. We have advanced algorithms and matching rules, which will ensure a high rate of matching. And we match all of SAP. That means we can match to your open and cleared FI documents, your parked and held documents, your GRIR documents, those documents that have been goods receipted, not yet invoiced. And we can also possibly match to your invoice automation tools. This is where documents are still stuck in processing in an invoice automation tool, not yet posted into SAP. By being able to match to all of the SAP data sources, this will give you a good understanding of where about in your P2P process these documents are possibly stuck.
So if the statement, you've explained all the auto matching and all of that, how does BEST handle if it doesn't match?
So for the exceptions, we do cater for suggested and manual matches. Suggested matches where the system will suggest possibly on other fields or on amount-only matches. So that's the first step that users will go through. And then the last step would be is where a user can carry out a full manual match, where there's no relation between the two documents, but from the user's investigation, they are aware that those documents relate to one another and they can carry out a manual match. Okay. Once your matching is completed, your reconciliation reports for all vendors and companies are available at the click of a button. We also have a host of other management reporting functionality that's available. For example, we can assist with the calculation of vendor accruals. We can report on matching statistics, and we can also track missing statements. Where we find that a statement is missing, we can send out automated statement reminders directly to the vendor without having a user having to engage with the vendor requesting their statement. From an approvals point of view, if you are clearing out approvals in your current reconciliation process, there's no more signing on paper. All the approvals are done online. We have multiple approval levels and criteria which we can use to structure according to your credit department. At some of our customers where we have implemented, they pay based on statement. So if there are invoices that are posted into SAP, not on the vendor statement, they would go into FPL1N and put an A block or B block, for example. With BEST, we have functionality to automatically implement that blocking. That brings us to the end of this reconciliation process. We do have standardized PDF and Excel outputs, which is available to send to your vendors. We find that it does add value in your reconciliation process. Firstly, it does improve vendor relationship, informing them of what has not been paid, because they do receive remittances probably for what has been paid. Also, you'll find that there's less queries coming from vendors by having a detailed, standardized reconciliation that they receive on a monthly basis. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing for a second and just get my SAP screens light quickly.
While Suresan gets his demo up, please remember you can send questions to me or to Suresan and we'll answer them during the presentation. If not, we will answer them at the end. So please feel free if you have any questions to send them through.
So I'm going to start sharing my screen again. Just give me a second for that. So the first loading mechanism that I'd like to present is what we call our statement reader, our BEST statement reader. As mentioned, that is an automated statement loading option, which reads an email inbox, retrieves the attachment, interprets the data, and then will automatically process that via an RFC into BEST in SAP. Now, it does take about 2 to 3 minutes for the statement to be loaded. It's got to be received, downloaded, read, converted, and then loaded via the RFC. I'm going to be sending this to our statements mailbox, statements@bestsap.cbi.com. I'm just going to be attaching my statement to this email. This is what my statement looks like. It's a PDF statement. It has the vendor's details in the header. It's got the line items in the body of the statement, and it's got a bit of an aging with a closing balance at the bottom. Now, there is no requirement to put anything in the body or the subject of this email. So I'm just going to send that off. And what I have on screen now is my SAP demo system. So as mentioned, BEST is based in SAP. And all we do is we add additional transactions to the current SAP landscape. Now, for purposes of the demonstration, what I have done is I've preloaded an Excel statement, which is one of the other loading mechanisms that's available. And we are now in our statement reconciliation online report. So this is a report that your users will use on a day-to-day basis during the reconciliation process, which will allow them to investigate and resolve any queries on the reconciliations. By clicking on execute, I'm now presented with the reconciliation for that Excel statement that I have loaded. Starting off with, we have what we call the reconciliation category. We deliver an exhaustive 64 possible categories in which data can populate into. This is just based on our exposure and experience within the reconciliation industry. Now, these categories can be customized to your requirement, so they can be renamed, combined, or further split down based on configuration options. So starting right at the top, we've got the statement balance. This is the closing balance of the statement that I've loaded. We then have this category, which is statement invoices already paid. Now, as mentioned, because we are based in SAP, we can drill down further into the actual FI document. And this will allow you to see that this document was actually cleared on this date with this clearing document number. If I go back, you'll see that the information is also available directly on the reconciliation report for you. That's just for ease of use of the users. We then have statement invoices posted after the statement date. So they're in SAP. They're not open at your key date, but is available for matching. The next few categories relates to what we call semi-matches. These are partial matches. This is just to identify where in your P2P process this document is, because it's not yet fully posted in SAP. So we've got statement invoices that are in ARC status, statement invoices matched to your HAL documents. If you have a VIM or vendor invoice management tool processing invoices automatically for you, we can also match to those documents, identifying those documents that are still stuck in processing. And lastly, we have statement invoices where we have goods receipted the items, but not yet invoiced these items. We've then got statement invoices unmatched, credit notes received on the statement, not in SAP, credit notes in SAP, not on the statement. We have a matching differences category. So similar to how you can set up a tolerance in your three-way matching between PO, GR, and invoice, you can set up a matching tolerance in BEST as well. This will typically be rounding off tolerances. So it will be smaller amounts. And if I drill down into this document number, so for every match done in BEST, a unique document number is allocated to each match. You'll see that on this match, my references are the same, my amounts are different. Now that's just what I've set up as my tolerance. There's a €150 difference, but I'm happy to match it. So it's an automatic match within my allowable tolerance. Okay. This reconciliation balances to your vendor balance at key date. My key date is today's date. So this is my balance as per my ledger, or as you will know, FPL1N. If you run your open items at 22nd of May, this will be the balance on FPL1N. And right at the bottom, you'll see that this reconciliation balance is to 0. We do have other reporting functionality that's also available from this online reconciliation report. And the next report that I'd like to show here is an aging report. So if I click on the aging tab, you'll see that I've now selected to include my aging. We have different aging buckets, which are dynamic based on your requirement. I'm aging by my document date versus my statement date. But you'll see there are a host of other options like posting date, due date, and for base date, there's multiple different options that can be selected. By clicking on execute, I have executed this across a number of vendors and company codes. You'll now see that I'm presented with an aging report, and I've subtotaled this firstly by my reconciliation category. If I then drill down, I can see this by vendor. And if I drill down further, I can see this at a line item level, where I have all my matching, my FI document number information, and all other relevant information from the line in question. Okay, so I just want to see if my PDF statement that I've emailed has now loaded. So I'm just selecting my PDF vendor. Click on execute. Okay, I can see my reconciliation is available. That tells me that my statement has been loaded. And this is the difference between loading an Excel statement versus the statement reader. An Excel statement will just be an additional step where a user will upload the Excel statement into BEST. Whereas with the statement reader, once the email is sent, provided the vendor doesn't change the format or layout, that statement gets interpreted month on month automatically without any user intervention. By clicking on the statement end date, I am now presented with the statement that was loaded into BEST. By clicking on source document, I did mention that we are able to attach the original statement as it was received from the vendor. So this is the PDF statement that was automatically attached. And you'll see that it was exactly the statement that I had shown in my email. The vendor's details at the top. We've got the line items with the aging and the closing balance at the bottom. Just to validate, my closing balance on this statement is 15,438 and 1 cent. If we just close this, we'll see that my closing balance on this statement is 15,438 and 1 cent, and my statement has loaded successfully.
So Suresan, at what level can BEST provide visibility, let's say on the reconciliation process, let's say at an individual reconciliation, a group reconciliation? What level can we actually go down to?
Okay, so Michael, I think what you're querying is, are we able to cater for different, we call it combining scenarios? So that's where you could receive a single statement from a vendor or multiple statements from a vendor, but you maintain a single statement in SAP. We can load all those statements onto one SAP vendor and reconcile it across those 5 statements. The opposite of that would be a vendor sends you a single statement, but in SAP, you maintain more than one vendor. We have BEST-specific master data where you can link vendors for reconciliation purposes. So that one statement can be loaded onto the vendor, but match across both vendors. Then one of the other scenarios that we come up quite frequently is you've got a vendor in different company codes, and you transact at that level with that vendor. They send you a single statement. You want to be able to match across all those company codes. That is possible in BEST as well. And you can have a combination of that. You can have what we call linked vendors, linked company codes, and multiple statements from the vendor. It all just depends on how you set up your master data. Next report that I'd like to present is what we call our Statement Status Hub report. And as its name, it is a hub report. This is your central report, which will have a full view on your reconciliation process. Now, Michael, I explained about combining vendors, etc. But this report will also then give you a full view of your current recon process and exactly where you are in your recon process, just to answer your question in a different way. So firstly, we have the statement load status. This will tell you whether the statement has been loaded into BEST or not. So those that are not loaded as yet, you'll see that they are listed as missing. If you are doing multiple different approvals as part of your reconciliation process, we can tell you exactly where in the approval process this is. I'll explain this category shortly. If you are using standard SAP accounting clerks, we can tell you who's the responsible accounting clerk. Alternatively, we do have our own, what we call linking, where you can say who's supposed to approve level 1, who should approve level 2, etc. Now, if I click on, let me drill down here and click on the approval level, you also get a full audit trail of who's done the approvals. This will tell you the user, date, and time that specific level of approval has been done. And for finalized recons, so in this instance, my level 2 was my finalized recon, it will tell you that the final approval has been completed. So this also just gives you visibility into the approval process as well. Then for statements that are missing, if you opt to utilize our best statement reader, we are able to tell you whether this is in processing in our best statement reader or if it's not yet in our best statement reader. If I drill down further, you can see this by vendor company code. We also give you the ability to classify vendors in two different ways. For demonstration purposes, I've classified it in frequency and risk of the vendor. Another report that I'd like to cover is called the Statement Status Statistics Report.
While you do that, there came a good question across from the live audience now, saying, can best match vendor statements to invoice management tools such as ReadSoft or OpenText Vim?
Yes. So I'm just going to loop back one screen just to show you. Yeah. So this category statement invoices in Vim, this is where we now match into data that's still in processing in ReadSoft or OpenText or Esker. There's thousands of them out there. What we also do offer is, as you can drill down into your FI document, now we know what the likes of ReadSoft and OpenText, they are based in SAP. So the invoice processing transactions are available directly in SAP. So we can offer, this is just a dummy screen, but we can offer drill down into that vendor invoice management tool as well. And this all depends on the level of access that you have, whether you can actually process this document further, carry out any approvals, but it will also allow you to investigate and resolve any issues as to why the document's still stuck in processing within that Vim tool.
I think that leads us into another live question. It says, if you have more than one app linked to SAP, is this going to contradict your system from working successfully? So I think what they mean there is, if they've got more than one system feeding in invoices into their solution, would that stop BEST from working correctly?
No. So we cater for multiple different sources on a Vim point of view. So I'm going to answer this question in two ways for you, Michael. So firstly, we cater for multiple different Vim sources. So for example, you could have ReadSoft and Cooper implemented. We can get data from both of those sources, match to both of that, and also categorize them separately. What we can also do is we have seen where customers have more than one SAP system or other ERP systems like Oracle or ACPAC, for example, and there's data that gets processed on those systems which they want to be able to reconcile against a single vendor statement. So we do have functionality which will allow those customers to bring in data from other data sources, not only Vim sources, from other data sources, where we then store this in a BEST table, and you can then reconcile against multiple different ERP sources as well.
I think that leads us into the final question. They also upload many invoices via template due to volume. Would this stop BEST from working?
Invoice, sorry, Michael, just repeat that question for me.
So we also upload many invoices via template due to volume. Would this stop the app from working?
No. So remember, we work on the end result. So how that invoice gets into SAP, we can obviously match in the semi-process to the semi-process documents, but we don't have any issue matching to any data that is available already in the SAP system.
Fantastic.
So I'm just going to
ask why we're still there, Suresan. Can one use a vendor invoice tool such as ReadSoft to load the statement rather than BEST statement reader?
Yes. So we do have customers that leveraged off the invoice automation tool because they already had an OCR solution implemented. They didn't want to implement another solution. So that customers then utilized or leveraged off ReadSoft, for example, to read the statement, or firstly retrieve the statement, read it, and convert it into our required format. That statement then gets either loaded via a BAPI call or saved in an SAP AL11 directory for our BEST program to process.
Thanks.
So this is the last report that I'm going to show as part of the live demonstration before I go into the rest of the slideshow. So this is our statement statistics report. This purely shows you statistics. We find that it is a good KPI tool because you can try and identify which user or accounting clerk, for example, would have issues. Now, if I see this user, for example, I can see there's 388 unmatched lines, and the total is 32 million. Now, this report, again, you can drill down into the detail of it, but can also be reported in different ways. For example, I can see this by vendor to try and identify which are my issue vendors. So if I look at this vendor is perfectly fine, everything's matched, but then I've got this vendor where none of the items are matched. Now, does this relate to issues on the vendor statement, or is it issues on how the SAP data has been processed? So this is one of the key aspects that could be taken from this report. We can also then, for example, have a look at this by document type. So you can now have it by your different documents, payments, invoices, credit notes, tolerances, etc., showing you your total matched, unmatched values and your total matched, unmatched lines. Sorry, I'm going to just stop sharing again. I just need to sort of screens. Perfect. I'm sharing again. So moving on to some of our customer feedback, what we do is post-implementation closeout, and our customer has been processing the best solution for a couple of months. We then do a case study with the customer to identify what are the benefits achieved utilizing the best vendor recon solution. Now, the first customer that I've got up screen here is Heineken Beverages. On average, they process about 745 recons per month. And previously, they were only able to get to about 500 reconciliations in their manual process. They're achieving an automatic matching rate of 99.37%. The reconciliation for them, as they've noted, is real-time, and also being able to reconcile to Resolve, Cooper, GRIR is very beneficial for them. They further went on to say that implementing BEST was about creating capacity, as they always viewed that the tool would give them the ability to do more reconciliations. They are also on track to meet the required return on investment, which is very good for them. This case study relates to Dis-Chem. It's a large pharmaceutical company based in South Africa. So over a 3-month period, you can see that the data volumes here are quite high. They did about 6,792 statements, of which 48% was loaded via Excel spreadsheet. That was the bulk of their statements, or EDI upload. And 52% was utilizing our copy capture because those were much smaller statements and much faster for users and simpler for users to just load using our copy capture. They achieved a 91.78% automatic match rate on about just under 1 million records for that 3-month period. Now, one of the important factors that they had noted was a 10% staff reduction in a year due to natural attrition. And there was no need for them to then replace that staff due to the fact that the vendor recon solution alleviated the time and effort on recon processing. Now, they've given us some times on how it took or how long it took to process a reconciliation versus with BEST. And you'll see that for the small statements for about 5 lines is more or less the same. Now, just to let you know, this timing is based on statement loaded into BEST, matching, reconciling, checking the reconciliation report, ensuring that there's no outstanding queries, carrying out payment to the vendor, and sending the final reconciliation to the vendor. For medium statements, which are about up to 50 lines, it used to take them 20 minutes. With BEST, it takes them about 5 to 10 minutes. For larger statements for about 1,000 lines, used to take them an hour. With best takes them 10 minutes. And for the very large statement, which is more than 10,000 lines, used to take them a day. And again, this is per vendor. And now at best, it takes them 20 minutes. Another important factor here, what they utilized is they had a lot of instances where there were invoices processed into SAP and it was not in the vendor statement. They used to have to go manually block those invoices that were not in the vendor statement. With the best functionality, we were able to automatically block that for them.
And from an auditing perspective, what has the customer's feedback been around auditings from their auditors?
Okay, so I'm going to talk to the auditing aspect on this slide here, Michael. For the FSM case study, just starting off with the time saving, their reconciliations were down from 4 hours to 15 minutes per reconciliation. They processed a little over 26,000 lines over 3 months and achieved a 93% automatic matching rate. Their return of investment was within 2 years of implementing the best vendor recons module. Now, from an auditing point of view, so I'm just going to go back up here actually. What was mentioned by the customers is that over the audit period, it was a simpler process for them. They granted the auditors access to the best reports, gave them a short training session on how to execute that, and it allowed the auditors just to go and retrieve the reconciliations that they wanted to review. Firstly, because all the reconciliations were standardized, they were in one format. It made sense to the vendor, to the auditor. Also, there was no time wasting whereby a user now needs to go to a filing room and go and pick up the original statement, get the reconciliation providers to the auditor. They were able to actually do all of this by themselves directly in BEST, utilizing that reporting role, and it just made the audit process much simpler. Also, what FSM had stated was, beyond efficiency, BEST also enables the centralization of their previously scattered records, along with digital accessibility for their auditors. Moving on to Northern, they reconciled on average per month, I think it was Q4 last year, about 587 vendors, which entailed 760 statements, and was about 16,119 lines, statement lines, and achieved a 95.5% automatic matching rate. Their coverage of recons improved at best. With the old manual way, they weren't able to do as many recons as they currently do with BEST. BEST also helped them to increase the rate at which they onboarded new suppliers, and also allowed for more transparency and visibility by showing what's really going on with the supplier statements. There was little room for errors. With BEST, the automatic matching is more accurate than the manual process that they used to follow. Is Pepco, they do about 781 recons per month, 653 of those recons being loaded via our BEST statement portal. That's where a vendor will access a URL. They'll upload their statement in a predefined Excel format. There'll be validations before that statement is loaded automatically into BEST. They achieve a 99% automatic matching rate, and they've noted that fully utilizing BEST has improved their lives for the better. Then just some stats from around the world. FSSI is New Zealand's largest grocery retailer, and they approximately 54% of their statements were loaded using our IDOC loading method, 32% via Excel upload, and the remaining direct statement loads using our copy capture feature in BEST. They achieve an automatic matching rate of 99.5%. Applegreen is an Irish company that has a number of petrol stations in Ireland, UK, and US. Approximately 65% of their statements are loaded using BSR, our BEST statement reader, 28% via Excel upload, and the remaining were direct uploads into BEST, and they achieved a 99.37% automatic matching rate. Glenbeigh is an Irish global nutrition group with operations in 32 different countries. All 100% of their statements are loaded using our best statement reader, and they achieved a 100% automatic matching rate.
These stats are fantastic. The main concern, well, the main reason most people do recon is to safeguard their cash flow. What options in the vendor recon module does the best offer to safeguard cash flow?
Yeah, so there's multiple options that's available within Best Medical. So starting off with, I mentioned the automatic blocking of invoice not on the statement. That's one of the factors that some of our customers use to improve cash flow. So pay the vendor when it's actually on the vendor statement. The second item I'd like to talk about is in FTSAM's instance, for example, prior to moving on to Best, they only had capacity to do reconciliations once a quarter. So that meant once a quarter, they would identify credit notes that were long outstanding from the vendor, not posted into SAP on the vendor statement. And that obviously then in turn weakened their cash flow because they were paying vendors without receiving credit notes to offset those payments to the vendors. Then from a reporting point of view, we also, similar to how SAP will do a duplicate check, so to ensure that you're not posting the same invoice to the vendor, which we all know is there are workarounds to getting that invoice in. We can do a duplicate check across the vendor statements. Now, we find that this often happens on open item statements, where with balance reports a lot more stronger and tighter because there's a flow in balance and vendors have to ensure that those statements balance. Whereas with open item statements, you'll find that you had an invoice on the statement a year ago, and now again, it's back on the statement, the vendor's asking for payment. So we can do a duplicate check, but we can also match to cleared items first. So if we find that there's a clear document with the same reference, same amount, we will first match to a cleared item, noting that this invoice has already been paid, instead of now leaving it as an unmatched document, resulting in the customer going and posting a new invoice to pay the vendor. Okay. So looking forward with Best, Best is constantly evolving. There's always new enhancements that have been built into the standard product solution. These enhancements are available via a support pack, and a new support pack is typically released every 6 months. Now, some of the latest enhancements include reporting enhancements to that statement status hub report that I presented during the demo. The first enhancement that I'd like to talk about is the auto-emailing functionality for approval notifications and escalations. So what we found was customers were requesting that workflow be implemented so that users know exactly when a reconciliation is available for approval. Now, we had developed and had a solution for rejection of approval. So when a reconciliation is rejected, an automated email will be sent to the previous approver. We've now just enhanced this report to also cater for emailing approvals out to users. This can be determined by the customer on how frequent they want to send it out. We find that sending it out once a day before end of day is the most feasible and viable option. And that's where a user will get an email in their email inbox. They click on the link. It will redirect them to the Best Approvals transaction in SAP. All the reconciliations allocated to them for approval will then be presented on one screen where they can then go and approve those reconciliations. What we've also included in the statement status hub report is I've mentioned that we can send out statement reminders to vendors. This is to remind them to send their statements for reconciliation purposes. Now, some of our customers want to add some general communication that they want to send to vendors. Maybe a year-end note on when year-end is going to be done, so statements can be processed earlier or provided earlier for earlier reconciliations. We now allow for attachments to be included in those emails. You can either choose the attachment from your PC or from an AL11 folder directly in SAP. We have built functionality to change SAP references to statement references. Now, you can do this through FBL1N. You can go check the document, edit it if you have the relevant access, and go and update the reference to be the same as the statement. It is a longer process because now you have to view the statement and your SAP data separately. So we've enhanced our reconciliation report, which will actually go and identify this for you automatically and give you an option to either mass or single update the SAP references. What this allows you to do is ensure that the references that are on the statement is what the vendor sees on the remittance, so it'll allow them to actually allocate the payment correctly. We've catered for some additional customizable fields at a reconciliation level. Now, I've mentioned that we've got 64 possible categories in which data can populate into. There was a requirement for our customers to be able to put in some action points, what needs to be done per category, who's the responsible team, because it could relate to different teams within the organization, and who's the action owner, who's the person that actually needs to action these points. So that can now be done at a configurable level per category, which can then be reported in BEST.
The question has come through with S4HANA enhancements and advances. Can you log in via SAP Fiori web screen rather?
Yes, that is actually my next slide. So with the S4HANA enhancers, one of the aspects is using BEST via the Fiori Launchpad. So everyone's accustomed to using it via the SAP GUI, which is how I presented the demo. But this is available via the Fiori Launchpad. What we deliver as a standard is transactional tiles. So you'll see that I've got a transactional tile for the BEST AP menu that will take you into a main menu. And then we've got them split at a transactional level as well. And then further to that, we also deliver some standard dashboards. Now, this is for management control and insight using the latest SAP technology. We have these three dashboards that are available. The first one being statement processing, where you can see for the current recon period, which statements are missing, which are waiting approval, and which are finalized. We then got a consolidated recon report. So I've explained these categories. So this is just subtotal by category. It'll show you the count and the amount. And then we've got a line item reconciliation report, which will show you the line items or percentage of line items that are reconciled, those that are unmatched with no reason, and those that are unmatched with a reason. Now, on any of these dashboards, if you click on any of these categories or sections, it will drill down to a more detailed report showing this to you by vendor, by company code, with all the relevant information. For example, on the statements, you'll see more statement information like the closing balance, the statement date, etc. On the consolidation report, consolidated recon report, and line item reconciliation reports, you will see it at a vendor company code level, but with all the line item information, like document date, document amount, reference, if there's any other references available, etc.
So we've just got another question for you with integration. It says, have we had any challenges with SAP Ariba or SAP Concur invoices?
So we haven't had challenges with that. So what we typically do is, because there's no table as such that hosts this in documents in processing like you would get with ReadSoft and OpenText, and we do this with Cooper, is provide us with a flat file of invoices still in processing within Ariba or Concur. We then take those documents and we put it into a BEST table, and we can then match to it like we would match to other Vim data. So, and we have done this at other customers that use Ariba and customers that use the likes of Cooper or invoicing tools that sit outside of SAP.
Fantastic. I think that's it. If there's any more questions that anybody would like to ask, please feel free to, if not, there are details on the final slide. Please feel free to reach out to us and ask us any questions. We're available for demos or any questions you might have around your current process. As we said, we are based in South Africa, UK, global. We can help you out in your organization. But yet again, thank you all for joining us. If there's no more questions, thank you, Suresan, for your time.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, everyone, for joining.